Marcus Ellison had been on his feet for 11 hours when he stopped at the flower stand outside Portbridge Memorial Hospital and bought a bouquet of birds of paradise. He didn't think twice about it. He never did. The woman at the stand knew him by now. Third visit this week. And she smiled as she wrapped the stems in craft paper and tied them with a thin orange ribbon. Marcus nodded, tucked the bouquet under his arm, and pushed through the hospital's automatic doors like a man who had somewhere important to be. He did. Room 314. His wife, Lena, had come through the procedure well, the surgeon had said. Minor. Routine. She would be home by the weekend. But Marcus had been there every evening anyway, arriving after his shift smelling faintly of industrial cleaning solution and machine oil, still wearing his work badge clipped to his chest. Portbridge General Facilities, Senior Operations Manager. He had not missed a single visit. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, stepped into the corridor, and started down the hall toward 314. The hallway was quiet at this hour. A nurse pushed a cart past him. A television murmured somewhere behind a closed door. Marcus rolled his shoulders, felt the familiar ache of a long day settling into his spine, and kept walking. He was almost at the door when he heard her laugh. He stopped, not because the laugh surprised him. He loved Lena's laugh, had spent 12 years loving it, but because of what came after it. Her voice carried through the gap in the partially open door, low and easy, the way she spoke when she believed no one else was listening. "Girl, I'm not worried," Lena said. "Marcus is not going anywhere. He never does." Marcus stood still. Something in his chest quietly tightened. Aubrey's voice came next, her best friend, unmistakable. "But you're really just going to let it keep going like this? Like, for how much longer?" "Until the business is stable," Lena said simply. Like it was a schedule. Like it was logistics. "I need the equity line to go through. Once that clears and I have the first season of clients locked, then I'm done. I've been done, Aubrey. I've been done for years." Marcus did not move. "He doesn't suspect anything?" Aubrey asked. Lena made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Marcus? No. He's too loyal for that. Too good. That man will work himself into the ground and bring me flowers while he's doing it. He thinks if he just keeps showing up, everything is fine. And Trent is patient," Lena said. "He understands the situation." Marcus looked down at the birds of paradise in his hand, the orange ribbon, the craft paper. He stood in that hallway for a long moment, a man holding flowers outside his wife's hospital room, and he did not go in. He turned around. He walked back to the elevator. He pressed the button. He rode down to the ground floor in silence. He walked back through the automatic doors, past the flower stand, and out into the night air of Portbridge City, and he did not make a sound. If you're watching this from the beginning and it already has your attention, hit that subscribe button right now, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We want to know. Now let's get back to Marcus. Because Marcus Ellison was not a man who broke easily. His father had made sure of that. He'd grown up in a 2-bedroom house on the east side of Portbridge with a father who worked corrections and a mother who cleaned offices at night. They were not rich. They were not loud. But his father, Gerald Ellison, had a saying he repeated so often that Marcus had eventually stopped hearing it as a saying and started hearing it as instruction. Never react in anger. Understand first. Then decide. Marcus had carried those words into every corner of his life. Through a facilities management degree he'd paid for himself. Through 10 years of working his way from maintenance crew to senior operations at Portbridge General, the city's largest hospital complex. Through 12 years of marriage to a woman he had believed, genuinely believed, loved him back. He was not stupid. He had simply trusted. And the difference between those two things was something he turned over in his mind the entire drive home that night. He sat in his parked car in the driveway of the house they shared, the house he had owned before Lena, the house his name alone was on, and he sat there for 40 minutes without going inside. He thought about the last 3 years, about the way Lena's business expenses had started appearing with more frequency and less explanation, about the trips to see vendors she never quite described, about the emotional distance that had grown between them like a slow tide, so gradual he had convinced himself it was stress, that it was the business pressure, that it was the natural rhythm of a long marriage. He thought about the equity line. $60,000 against the house. He had approved it, had signed paperwork, had believed it was for her event planning company. Lena's dream, 5 years in the making. He had believed in that dream the same way he believed in her. He went inside. He did not call her. He did not text. He sat at the kitchen table, folded his hands, and breathed. In the morning, he called his sister. Marcus Ellison answered on the second ring. Marcus, it's 7 a.m. I know. Pause. What happened? It wasn't a question. She knew him too well for that. He told her. Not everything, not yet, just enough. What he had heard. The names. The timeline. The equity line. When he finished, Brielle was quiet for a moment, and then she said with a steadiness he was grateful for, "Don't do anything yet. Don't say a word to her. You hear me? Not one word." "I know. Do you know an attorney?" "I'll find one. Find a good one," Brielle said. "And Marcus, document everything. Starting right now." He took a personal day from work. He spent it at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing down every financial irregularity he could recall over the past 3 years, with dates, amounts, and what Lena had told him they were for. By the time the afternoon light shifted across the floor, he had 4 pages. Then he did something he had never done in 12 years of marriage. He opened her email. He knew the password. She had given it to him years ago when she'd needed him to confirm a hotel reservation while she was driving. She had never changed it. He wasn't prepared for what he found. Not because it was dramatic, it wasn't, not at first. It was practical. Emails to a family law attorney dated 8 months ago. A consultation appointment. A follow-up email asking about asset division in cases where a primary residence was purchased before marriage. She had been planning this for at least 8 months. He closed the laptop, sat back, breathed. Then he picked up the phone and called attorney Wami Aliemi, whose name Brielle had texted him 20 minutes earlier with a single message. "She's the best. Tell her everything." Wami Aliemi's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown with a view of the Portbridge waterfront. She was a small woman in her early 50s with close-cropped natural hair and reading glasses that she wore on a beaded chain around her neck. She shook Marcus' hand, gestured to the chair across from her desk, and said, "Tell me everything from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." He did. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she put her glasses on, pulled a yellow notepad of her own toward her, and said, "The equity line, has it been drawn on yet?" "No," Marcus said. "The approval came through, but I haven't transferred the funds." "Good. Do not transfer those funds. Not a dollar." She wrote something down. "The property. It was in your name before the marriage?" "Yes." "And has her name been added to the deed at any point?" "No." Wami made another note. "That protects you significantly." She looked up at him. "I want to be direct with you, Mr. Ellison. What you're describing, the gradual movement of money, the pre-consultation with a divorce attorney, the pattern of hidden expenses, this has a legal term. We call it dissipation of marital assets. It means one spouse is spending or moving money in anticipation of divorce in a way that disadvantages the other. Courts take that seriously." Marcus leaned forward. "How serious?" "Serious enough that if we can document the transfers, and from what you're telling me it significantly affects the settlement outcome." She set her pen down. "But here is what I need you to do. I need you to be patient. I need you to go home, act completely normal, and give me time to pull together the financial picture. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about his father. About 11 hours on his feet and flowers in craft paper. About a corridor outside room 314. "Yes," he said. "I can do that." He went home. He cooked dinner. He visited Lena at the hospital that evening, and when she smiled at him from her hospital bed, he smiled back. He asked how she was feeling. He adjusted her pillow. He stayed for an hour and a half. He kissed her forehead when he left. On the drive home, he called Wami from the car. I need you to pull every transaction from the joint account going back 36 months. Already started, she said. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus Ellison became two men. There was the Marcus that Lena saw. Attentive, steady, bringing her home from the hospital, helping her settle back into their house, cooking meals she didn't thank him for, sitting across from her at the dinner table and asking about the business with what appeared to be genuine interest. He asked about vendors, about venue contacts, about her launch timeline. He nodded at her answers. He refilled her water glass. And there was the Marcus that Lena did not see. Sitting at his desk after she fell asleep, going through bank statements with a highlighter, cross-referencing dates, photographing documents, building a spreadsheet that Wami had helped him organize, columns for date, transaction amount, stated purpose, and actual evidence. The spreadsheet had 47 rows and was still growing. He found the hotel bookings on a Tuesday night in late October. They were in a shared calendar she used for the business, a calendar she had added him to 2 years ago, so he could track her vendor meetings. She had apparently forgotten, or perhaps she had simply stopped being careful. The bookings were listed under client consultation, but the location was the Grandview Suites on the north side of Portbridge, a boutique hotel with no conference facilities whatsoever. There were 6 entries over 14 months. Each one was a Friday. Marcus stared at the screen for a long time. Then he added the entries to the spreadsheet. Lena, meanwhile, had started to change. He noticed it the way you notice a shift in weather, not in a single moment but in accumulation. She was on her phone more. She stepped outside to take calls she used to take in the kitchen. She had started asking questions about money with a new kind of urgency. When would the equity transfer come through? Had he spoken to the bank yet? The business needed to move on the venue deposit before the end of the month. "I've been thinking," Marcus said one evening, setting a plate in front of her, "about the timing of the equity line." Lena looked up. "What about it?" "I don't think now is the right moment." He sat down across from her. "The rates shifted. I want to wait." She put her fork down. "Marcus, we've been over this. The deposit deadline is November. If we miss it, we lose the venue. Then we'll find another venue." She stared at him. "What is happening with you?" "Nothing," he said calmly. "I'm being careful. That's all." She searched his face for something. A crack? A tell? Anything? And found nothing. Marcus took a bite of his food and asked her how her afternoon had been. That night, he heard her on the phone in the backyard. He didn't try to listen. He didn't need to. He had enough. He called Wami in the morning. "I think we're getting close," he said. "We are," she said. "I've been compiling the packet. Give me 4 more days." He gave her 4 days. Then he gave her 2 more because he was not a man who rushed. On a Thursday evening in early November, Marcus Ellison set the dining room table. He put out 2 placemats, 2 glasses of water. He did not cook dinner. In the center of the table, where a serving dish would normally sit, he placed a manila folder thick, organized, tabbed at the edges with small orange markers. When Lena came downstairs and saw the table, she stopped. "We're eating in the dining room? Sit down, Lena." She looked at him. Something in his voice, not loud, not cold, just final, moved through the room like a current. She sat down slowly. Marcus sat across from her. He folded his hands on the table and looked at her for a moment without speaking. In 12 years, he had never looked at her quite like this, not with anger, not with hurt, but with a kind of absolute clarity that was somehow worse than either. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I'm here to have an honest conversation, possibly for the first time." Lena's eyes moved to the folder. "What is that?" "It's everything." He opened it and turned it toward her. "Bank records. 36 months of transactions, highlighted and documented. 47 irregular withdrawals or transfers totaling just over $19,000. He turned to the second tab. Hotel bookings. 6 of them, 14 months, all Fridays, all at the Grandview Suites. Listed in the business calendar as client consultations. He turned to the third tab. Correspondence with a family law attorney. Consultation booked 8 months ago. Follow-up 2 weeks later. Questions about asset division on premarital property. Lena had not spoken. Her face had passed through something. He watched it happen. Some version of calculation, followed by the realization that there was nothing left to calculate. And then, Marcus said, his voice unchanged, "There is this." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a small digital recorder on the table. November 2nd, Portbridge Memorial. Room 314. He pressed play. Her own voice came out of the small speaker. Easy. Relaxed. Like she was talking about a project plan. Marcus is not going anywhere. He never does. Until the business is stable. I've been done, Aubrey. I've been done for years. Marcus? No. He's too loyal for that. He clicked it off. The dining room was very quiet. "This is not an argument," Marcus said. "This is reality. I'm not angry. I'm not here to punish you. But I need you to understand something." He leaned forward slightly. I know all of it. And I have known for weeks." Lena finally spoke. Her voice came out flat, stripped of its usual movement. "You recorded me." "The recorder was in my pocket," he said. "I walked into a hospital hallway to visit my wife. What I heard was your choice." "Marcus, the equity line is not happening," he said. "It was never going to happen. The funds were never transferred." He closed the folder and sat back. "Attorney Wami Alayemi will be in contact with whoever you've retained. She has this same packet. And more." Lena looked down at the folder, then at the recorder, then at him. The denial had dissolved somewhere in the last 3 minutes, and what was left behind it looked like something she hadn't planned for. Being seen. "I didn't mean," she started. "Don't," he said, not harshly, just firmly. "Please don't tell me what you meant. I heard what you meant. In your own voice. In your own words." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "What happens now?" "Now," Marcus said, "we end this honestly. For once." He stood up. He picked up the folder. He left it on the table for her to look at if she chose to. Then he went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and stood at the window looking out at the backyard where the light was fading over the fence line. He had thought this moment would feel like something volcanic. He had thought there would be some release, some great crash of emotion that the weeks of silence had been building toward. But standing there in his kitchen, in his house, on a Thursday night in November, Marcus Ellison felt something much quieter than that. He felt clear. The family gathering happened 10 days later. It had been Lena's idea. She'd called the dinner 2 weeks prior, before the table confrontation, framing it as a post-recovery celebration at her sister's house. By the time the evening arrived, she hadn't canceled it. Perhaps she thought she could still manage the narrative. Perhaps she had underestimated him again. There were 11 people at the table. Lena's sister and her husband. Lena's mother. Lena's aunt. 2 of her cousins. Betrayal, who Marcus had quietly warned in advance. 2 family friends who had known them as a couple for years. Dinner went normally. Lena was warm, animated, the version of herself she deployed for audiences. She talked about the recovery, about the business, about future plans. She made a comment, light, almost casual, about how the stress of the past year had been difficult for the marriage, and how Marcus had sometimes been emotionally unavailable. She said it with a soft smile, sympathetic, like she was protecting him even while she was framing him. Marcus waited. After the plates were cleared and the conversation settled, Lena's sister asked how things were between them. A simple question, the kind families ask. Lena opened her mouth. Marcus set his phone on the table. "I want to play something," he said. "I want everyone here to hear this, because I think it's important." The table went quiet. He pressed play. Not the full recording, just a minute of it. "Enough." Her voice came through the phone's speaker into the dining room where her mother, her sister, her aunt sat and listened. "Marcus is useful. For his finances. For his silence. I've been done for years, Aubrey. Trent is patient." He stopped the recording. The silence that followed was a different kind than the one in his dining room 10 days prior. That silence had been between 2 people. This one was between a woman and every person in her life who had believed a version of her she had constructed. Lena's mother looked at her daughter, said nothing. Her sister set down her glass. Lena said, "That's out of context." But her voice came out thinner than she intended, and no one at the table moved toward her with it. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," Marcus said, and he meant it. "I just needed the truth to exist in the same room as the people who deserve to know it." He looked around the table. "I'm sorry to do this here, but she was going to use this room to tell a different story, and I couldn't let that stand." He stood up, said goodnight to the room. Brielle stood with him. They left together. In the car, Brielle didn't say anything for a full city block. Then she reached over and put her hand briefly on his arm. "Dad would have been proud of that," she said. "I don't know," Marcus said. "Maybe. I just did what was true." The divorce took 4 months. Wami Alayemi was thorough. The documented dissipation of marital assets, $19,460, ultimately weighed significantly against Lena in the proceedings. The house, as premarital property, remained Marcus without contest. The equity line, never drawn, remained intact. Lena's business, without the funding it had been designed around, stalled in its first quarter. 2 venue deposits were lost. A vendor contract expired. The launch that had been built on Marcus Financial Foundation found itself without a foundation. Trent Caldwell, who had positioned himself as a future business partner in Lena's plans, quietly stepped back from the arrangement when the legal proceedings became public knowledge in their circle. His own professional reputation, he worked in commercial real estate, took on a chill that lasted well into the following year. Lena moved into an apartment on the west side of Portbridge. She and Marcus did not speak after the paperwork was signed. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said better in other rooms. Marcus went back to work. He went back to 11-hour days and facility systems and staff briefings and the particular satisfaction of managing something large and complex that functioned correctly because he paid attention to it. He ate lunch at his desk more often than he should have. Brielle texted him every few days. He answered every time. On a Saturday in late February, he drove to his storage unit on the east side of the city and pulled out a set of woodworking tools he hadn't touched in 4 years. A table saw, chisels, a belt sander with a cracked housing he'd been meaning to replace. He loaded them into his truck, drove home, cleared space in the garage and set them up. He stood there for a while just looking at them. Then he put on his safety glasses, clamped a piece of walnut to the workbench, and made the first cut. It wasn't perfect. His hands were out of practice. The angle was slightly off. He unclamped it, adjusted, and went again. Better. He worked for 3 hours. When he finally pulled off his glasses and set down the chisel, the garage smelled like sawdust and machine oil, and the light through the side window had shifted from afternoon into early evening. He had the rough shape of a small shelf in front of him. Nothing impressive, nothing finished, but something he had made himself, from a piece of wood, with his own hands, in his own space. His phone buzzed on the workbench. He glanced at the screen. Lena's name. He looked at it for a moment. The screen kept buzzing. Then it stopped. He set the phone face down, picked up the chisel, and went back to work. The garage was quiet except for the sound of his tools. The shelf took shape slowly in the way that honest things do. Not all at once, not dramatically, but through repetition and attention and the willingness to correct what wasn't right and keep going. He worked until the light was nearly gone. Then he cleaned his tools, hung them back on the pegboard, swept the floor, and stood in the doorway of the garage looking out at the dark backyard. He breathed in the cold February air. He was 41 years old. He owned his home. He had his work. He had his sister. He had a shelf that still needed sanding and probably 3 more sessions before it was finished, and he was looking forward to every one of them. Not all betrayal destroys a man. Some of it strips away the parts of him that were never really his, the version of himself he'd shrunk into to make someone else comfortable, the silence he'd mistaken for peace, the loyalty he'd given to a woman who had been counting it like currency. And when all that is stripped away, what's left is just a man. Clear-eyed, a little quieter than before, and impossible now to manipulate, because he finally understands what his father meant. You don't react in anger. You understand first, and then you decide. If the story stayed with you, if Marcus reminded you what quiet strength actually looks like, drop a comment right now. Tell us where you're watching from. We read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that button. Turn on the notifications. Because we have more stories like this coming, and you do not want to miss them. Like this video if Marcus handled it exactly right. We'll see you in the next one.